Over a decade ago, researchers studied the question, what makes the best software teams work? What capabilities, what tools, what metrics do they have in common? I'm standing here in front of the Google offices in Boulder, Colorado, because these researchers formed a company called DevOps Research and Assessment, or DORA, and it was bought by Google to continue the research. Today I'm speaking with Nathen from DORA and Google Cloud to explore all the learnings this team has accumulated by speaking with over 35,000 different organizations. And in fact, we're also going to be covering a sneak peek of some learnings of a report that doesn't even come out yet. But most importantly, we're going to be looking at how you can take all these learnings and apply them in concrete ways to your software teams today to make them even more awesome. All this and more in this edition of Sleuth TV Live. Welcome to Sleuth TV Live. For those who were unfamiliar, that intro was in the style of Computer Chronicles, which is a TV show in America from 1980 to 1990, where they covered the technology at the time. So if you want to see a video on the current war between Amiga and Atari ST, then I highly recommend you check out Computer Chronicles on YouTube. But that's not why we're here. We are here to talk about DORA. Welcome again. So before I get into that, let me introduce myself. My name is Don Brown. I am the CTO and co-founder of a company called Sleuth. And what we do is we help software teams improve their delivery through tracking and improving their DORA performance, DORA-related performance, the metrics, the capabilities, things like that. So we are super excited to have on today someone from the DORA team who we'll talk about in a minute, has been there since the beginning, however you define the beginning as. This is a two-part series. So this first part, we're going to be talking with Nathen from DORA about the DORA metrics, how the DORA metrics are awesome, how they can help you make your team awesome. And then part two, which is next week, we're going to be talking about a new launch from Sleuth called Sleuth Automations, which is a set of tools and actions automations to help you implement your DORA metrics, or rather help you improve your DORA metrics. And in fact, the end of this show, we're going to be showing a sneak peek, a world premiere, if you will, of this new automations feature in the form of a trailer. But that's not why you're here right now, although hopefully it's also why you're here. But that's initially why you're here now, is to talk about DORA. And before I do that, I just want a bit of housekeeping. Feel free to join in the conversation. We're doing this live. This is not taped ahead of time. This is all, well, okay, the intro was taped ahead of time, but otherwise, this is all live. We're looking for your interactions. And if you're watching this later, please feel free to comment below, and we'd love to respond and start that conversation. Now, without further ado, let's get into it. I am so excited to introduce the guest for today's show, and that is Nathen from DORA, Google Cloud, all the wonderful things. Now, Nathen has been there. I think we were just discussing about this before the show. Nathen has been there from the beginning in both definitions of the word. Say more about that.
Yeah, sure. So I've been with DORA since the beginning, which means that, the first time a State of DevOps survey went out from this research team, I was a participant in that survey. So at the time, I was responsible for building and managing a bunch of different applications, moving things out of data centers into clouds, and so forth. So I was essentially a researched individual, my team. But beyond that, I've been with Google now for about 5 years, and shortly after I joined Google, Google acquired the company called DORA. And I've been working in that space for the entire time. So, yeah, that's me.
Yeah, so you've kind of been there since the beginning, which is perfect, because my first question for you was, let's talk a little bit about why. I think when people hear DORA, they immediately, at least in my experience, they jump right into the metrics. They jump right into like, oh, you just need to measure these 4 things, and that's all DORA has to offer. But let's go, before we get into that, which I do want to get into it, let's go a little bit more back in time, going back to the Computer Chronicles, the 80s. That's on my mind, nostalgia, all that. It's a hell of a drug, sure, I think, as they say. Talk to me about what problem the DORA group set out to solve. Was it to measure all the things, or was it something else?
Yeah, it certainly wasn't to measure all of the things. Although I think that the initial research was about, look, there was, I don't remember exactly who wrote it or when it was, but there was an article that came out that said basically IT doesn't matter. Technology doesn't matter. It's about the business. And while, sure, it's about the business, technology does matter, and we knew this. And so part of what the research started to do was really answer that question, does technology really matter? And if technology matters, how so? Does it drive organizational outcomes? And how do we know that we're good at technology? So we really had to, the researchers really had to come up with a way to measure all of those things. And that's sort of the beginning of Dora. Now, what Dora has become really is, if I were to sum it up in one phrase, I would say that Dora is the framework that helps you get better at getting better. It's all about continuous improvement. And in order to continuously improve, you have to first understand, where are you today? So now we can make changes and plans to get better.
Right. So it's definitely that kind of holistic thing. It's not just about the measuring. It's not just about, here's some things to try. It's kind of that whole package is what you're saying. That's a great point. And I think that's something that's often missed on that. There is something that also I hear. This is basically why I wanted you on board. I wanted you to help me disprove all these myths, because if you hear it from Dora, you can't get more official than that. One thing that I often hear as well is Dora produces a report every year called the DevOps Research and the Dora report is the State of DevOps report.
That's right. And
DevOps, developer operations, deploying software. Look, not all teams are there. Not all teams are at the point where they're going to be delivering frequently. And that's one of the things that Dora Metrics encourages people to deploy frequently. But some teams, hey, look, we have a mobile app, we deploy every 3 months. That's just the way it is. Or we're in a highly secured environment, we're a bank, any of those kind of things. It's not going to happen very frequently. So they say, well, that Dora, it's not for me. All that stuff is completely useless. I'm not ready for it. That's what I hear. I'm not ready for Dora. I'm sure you've heard the same thing. I'm curious to hear your response.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think that, look, Dora started off as this investigation into how do teams get better at software delivery performance. And yes, we use that word DevOps, and frankly, I'm tired of that word. I think that that word has kind of outlived its shelf life. DevOps was initially about how do we get developers and operators working better together. But really, the underlying mechanism of that was how do we get them focused on the goals of our customers and creating great customer experiences using technology. So it really is about the business and the technology that we can enable for our customers. So first, DevOps or not, look, it's about delivering software. And the point that developers can sit all day and write code, that's great. They should be as productive as possible. But if we can't get that code into the hands of our users, there's frankly no or little benefit from having that code at all. And so Dora is really that investigation into how do we improve that software delivery performance. And it is both program and platform agnostic. So we don't look at specific tools, but also it goes beyond just the technical capabilities that teams need. We look at process and culture. How do teams work together? How are they sharing information and so forth?
Right. So it's the whole picture. I guess that's really kind of the point of all of this. It's the whole picture. It's not just about deployment. It's the others.
It is the whole picture. And for those of you that are saying, oh, we only deploy once every 3 months or twice a year, we're not ready for Dora. I guess my question back to you is, how are those infrequent deployments going? I'm not saying that you need to get to hourly deployments or anything like that, but certainly there's an opportunity for you and your teams to get better or to improve some of those metrics. And of course, the metrics aren't the end goal. It's improving our team and helping with the well-being of the people on our team and the value that we're able to deliver to our organizations and to our customers.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I think you're drawing the distinction between the value you're delivering and the code you're deploying. I think sometimes we get those two intertwined, and I think you're seeing a lot of things such as feature flags starting to separate those. Like I can deliver code and nothing's turned on. There's no value. Or I can deliver value, by flipping a flag or different kind of things. So you're talking about really separating those two concepts.
Absolutely. And to be quite fair and frank, you can deliver value to your users without shipping any lines of code, without shipping any technology. And it really is about that alignment and understanding what types of experiences are we trying to create for our users? What are our users hoping to get from us as a provider of some service? And let's make sure that we're meeting them where they are. And Don, I don't know if you know this about users and customers, but the thing that they love today, it's not the thing that they're going to love in 2 weeks or in 6 months' time. Their expectations are always changing as well.
Yes. Yes. So many more things I could say to that one, but I will be succinct and say yes. Things change. And I think that's an evolution we went through as well. So, obviously we build a tool to help you track DORA metrics and improve them. And I think initially we were just like, it's all about deploys, it's all about deploys. And so let's focus on that continuous deployment. Once you get down the continuous deployment, it's very addictive. It's really fun to be able to write code and click a button and in 10 minutes it's out to the world. But then when you talk to other people and you realize not everyone's in that situation, they have various constraints or whatever, but the core idea is the same, which is how do we get value out? How do we get little bite size, not just giant chunks, and have that stream so that we can not only deliver well, but deliver high quality stuff that doesn't have long downtimes and things. That's probably my favorite thing about the DORA metrics, how it's not just about speed. I think too many things are all about speed. It's like, what's your velocity? How many story points you're delivering? All about speed. And DORA says, yeah, that's an aspect of delivery, but quality is an aspect of delivery as well.
Absolutely. When we talk about the DORA metrics, really there are a bunch of metrics that go with DORA, but most people are familiar with the 4 key metrics for software delivery performance. And as you said, they are measures of throughput or velocity. Specifically, we ask, how long does it take a change to go from a developer's workstation into production? And how often are you pushing changes through to production? But beyond that, it is stability. So when you do push changes through to production, how often does those changes fail and require immediate attention from the team and probably some rework? And then when that is the case, how long does it take the team to get the service back to running in the way that your customers expect? So 2 metrics for throughput, 2 metrics for stability. And what we find is that, well, one, these 2 things aren't trade-offs of one another. In fact, in order to be stable, you have to have high throughput. When you have high throughput, you increase your stability. We do this by shipping smaller changes and shipping in smaller batches. In fact, those 4 measures are really a proxy for how big is your batch size. But asking that question is hard to get any data or science out of that. So that's important. And then the other thing that's important is that these measures can be used for any type of technology, whether it's that mobile application or, frankly, your mainframe application. Those measures actually matter. And then the final thing I'll say about them is that as a cross-functional team, we have to have shared accountability for them. If we go back to the very, very early days of DORA and the DevOps movement, we might have turned to the developers and say, those throughput metrics, you get a bonus on them. And then to our operators, those stability metrics, you get a bonus on them. And now we're fighting against each other. Let's move away from that and get aligned.
Yeah, and I mean, if you go back to the early DevOps stuff, that was the whole point of that at all, was just like, we're not 2 different sides, we're working together. It gets turned into things, vendors, of which, of course, I am totally not one, tends to take it and try to sell stuff on it. But it's a philosophy. It's not really a set of things that you can go and go through. And it's important, because once you understand and agree with the philosophy, then so many more things that you'll interpret that philosophy one way today, but another way, a different way, because you understand the core principles. Now, before I get off the metrics, which I feel like we've already kind of set it up a little bit, that DORA metrics, or the metrics are all about DORA, and then we knocked it down a little bit. But I can't let this topic go, and this one was coming. I know you're not excited about it, but this is coming. Metrics have been in the news lately. I don't know how much you've been tracking that. The DORA community, by the way, dora.dev, joined today, has been very active on this particular topic. So for those who aren't aware, let's do this one. Let me share some context. So, by the way, this is the dora.dev website, and you can join the community. There's a mailing list. I might plug it once or twice before my time's done. Anyways, going back to the topic. So this is the blog. Well, actually, that's what I wanted to highlight. This is the blog post that came out. It's by McKinsey, which is a big IT consulting company. And they came out with a very provocative title called, Yes, You Can Measure Software Developer Productivity. And we could talk about this forever. There's so many things. In fact, actually, you and I are both going to be in Vegas for a Dora community meetup. And I'm sure we are going to have beers and have all kinds of fun off-camera conversations. But for the purposes of this, they make the argument that you can measure things, and they go into why and why it's important. Where it applies to this particular conversation is Dora is heavily mentioned. See if I can highlight that. I guess I can't. It's an image. Dora metrics are mentioned in one way that you can help measure at the system, the team, and the individual level, and Dora is included. What is your response to all this? And actually, let me back up a little bit quickly, just to be clear. I'm asking your response, not Dora, not Google. This isn't like I'm trying to, put you on the spot, speak for Google so we can create headlines. I just want to know kind of what are your kind of, as someone who's been in the beginning, as someone who doesn't just do this for a job, has lived and breathed it before he even had a job doing it. What's your response?
Yeah, I think, look, first, thanks to McKinsey, they're highlighting really important research frameworks like Dora and like the space framework. That part I really like. I do think that, like with all measures, we have to be very careful and watch out for Goodhart's law. You know Goodhart's law, right? When a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. I think it's really important that when we talk about those Dora metrics, those are really at an application or service level. It's not asking how frequently is Don deploying, but instead, how frequently do we deploy this application? How stable is this application? And in most organizations, the team is responsible. In fact, that cross-functional team is who's responsible for deploying and operating that system. Now, you mentioned, that there's a healthy discussion about exactly how we do this. And I think one of my concerns, if you will, is that as we start bringing these metrics into, say, performance reviews, we have to be very careful because it can really lead to some really unhealthy behaviors that maybe don't support the team and the organization very well. But I would, just like you all, echo, head over to dora.dev, join the community, and you'll find a really healthy discussion there. Participate in that. We'd love to hear your thoughts.
That's right. There's a lot of really good write-ups. Kent Beck had a really good one. There was several other ones that were posted. There was a video. Actually, here, I'll just show it real quick. There's a video that I found really interesting yesterday, and that was from Dave Farley, the guy who wrote the book, or also co-wrote the book on continuous delivery.
That's right.
He's a subtle guy, so you're not really sure where this video is going to go by the title. But it's some strong feelings. I do like the discussion, though.
Yeah, I thought that video from Dave was really good. He also mentions his more recent book, Modern Software Engineering, which I think is a great read. And then, of course, on the Dora community, we have one of our community guides, Steve Fenton, who wrote up a really nice response and reflection about that particular article from McKinsey as well. Yeah. And look, I think at the end of the day, look, as leaders, as executives of organizations, we want to know, are our teams being productive? And hopefully we're asking that question with a follow-up of, how can I support them? How can I enable that within my teams? If we're doing that, we're focused on that improvement and that learning, I'm all for that.
I think that's a very balanced approach. I think it's easy to look at something like this and go with the title of Dave Farley saying, it's all bullocks, just screw it all. There's genuine needs behind this, and there are some good concepts about it. And so anyways, I highly recommend you go take a look at this. And again, join the Dora Dev community, read some of these analysis. I guarantee you will learn something. So again, I think we pretty much knocked down this concept that Dora is all about the metrics, and that's it. It's just that one little part of the Dora report, because for those who don't know, when I keep saying the State of DevOps report, this is what I'm talking about. This is a PDF that they produce every year, I think since 2014 or something. It's been quite a while.
Yeah, nearly a decade, yep.
And you'll look at this. I mean, what are we looking at? 77 pages? And yes, there is a part that talks about the 4 metrics. Here's the 4 metrics: software delivered, one more for reliability. There's a lot more stuff in here, a lot of learnings where they try to go deeper. Your team goes deeper and says, what are some of the capabilities that enable this? And yes, they show up in metrics, so it's good to be able to measure, but it's really about understanding the processes, the capabilities, the tools that these people are using so that you can learn from that. We have a report coming out at the end of September about the next one, 2023. And I think you were wanting to give us a little sneak peek of some of the learnings that are going to be in that report. And I think they were around software review. Maybe you could say more about that.
Yeah, for sure. But just so everyone knows, this is preview. So this is covered under FriendDA. You'll know exactly what the report says when the report is released, but not before. So shh, you didn't hear it from
Yes.
me. Right. So when we look at software delivery performance, one of the things that I've encountered on many teams is that software delivery performance is driven a lot by, of course, all of those processes and capabilities that teams have. I was working with a team recently whose deployment frequency was about once every 3 days. That's great. But their change lead time, how long did it take a change to get into production? Oddly enough, was 15 to 18 days. So that's nearly 5 times greater than their deployment frequency. Why is that? Well, I don't know, but that's exactly how you should use those 4 metrics. Let's use that signal to help us investigate the system a little bit more and understand where are the bottlenecks, what's holding us back. On that particular team, what they found was that change reviews were the thing that were really holding them back. And this is specifically about code reviews. So it's not about a change approval board in this particular case, but more developers on this team open up a pull request. They have to wait for another developer to review that pull request before it gets merged in. Well, that turned out to be the very bottleneck on that team. So in this year's research, we said, well, let's figure out if that's common across other industries, across other teams, and so forth. And what we did find was that one of the biggest things holding back software delivery performance is that change review time. Now, that doesn't mean that it's universal for everyone that change review time is bad. Maybe some teams have a really good change review time, and there's another area that they need to focus on. And that, I think, is really the value of this research framework. We can look at those capabilities and sort of assess how are we doing with each one of them, trying to identify the bottleneck. Because following the theory of constraints, we want to find that bottleneck and alleviate the pressure there. Of course, that means the bottleneck just moves somewhere else, but that's our next opportunity to improve.
And I think that's an important meta point to make about this research is every year you pick different topics that you're going to dive into. I remember a couple years back, it was what was it? A platform, self-service platforms for developers, and how important that was. One time it was mental health and kind of creating a healthy collaborative environment. Another time, I forget the different ones.
Yeah,
But
we've looked at security, at documentation. We look at documentation again this year, and yeah, documentation matters. I'll say that much.
yeah, and it was documentation for developers, if I remember correctly. It wasn't just, for it was yeah, you should not just have tribal knowledge and teams. And again, this is a research thing. I think that's an important distinction to make as well. This isn't three people sitting in a room saying, it's important this, and we'll write a paper on it. Like you're
Right.
actually interacting, talking to different people to find statistical correlations of these behaviors with better performing teams.
That's right. And to be fair, like it starts with us sitting together in a room, a bunch of subject matter experts that have encountered this software delivery process with many, many teams. And we come up with some hypotheses. What do we think is driving software delivery performance? What do we think is driving organizational performance? And then as a team, we come up with a bunch of questions that help us really hone in on whether or not those hypotheses are correct. Then we open up the survey to thousands of people around the world in every industry and in every type of organization as well, from the smallest, started yesterday startups to 250-year-old banks. They all participate. And so we collect all of this data and use it to draw these predictive connections. We can predict that as you get better at, for example, documentation, internal documentation for your users, that's going to have a significant impact on your team's capability to do things like trunk-based development, which then has another predictive impact on software delivery performance and so forth.
And when you say talk to a lot of people, you're not kidding. The last number I heard was 35,000. Is there a new number for this year? I'm sure it's higher.
There will be a new number this year, and I think it's it's around 36,000 people that we've talked to in the course of this research. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So there you go. It's not just a couple thought leaders, whatever that means.
Nope.
That's what I love at the hypothesis and then validating the hypothesis. Sometimes you might be right. Sometimes you be massively right. Sometimes not really right. But you're letting the data show. And I think that's what really separates this body of work than perhaps a blog or something you read on Hacker News.
Yeah,
But
we also, we find surprises every year in the data too that are hard for us to explain, hard for us to even reason about. In fact, in the 2022 report, there was a whole section called surprises, things that behaved differently last year than they had in previous years.
That's right. I think I remember that when that was where you had different categories where you called
Hmm.
people elite, you called teams high performing based on their metric clusters, and then found the next report had it all changed, which I don't think too many people would be too sad about because I know there's a lot of pushback on trying to put people in they're a high performer, they're a low performer, because again,
Yes.
going back to the good ones law, when you start measuring it in specific, say you must be high performer, once you are, you're good, you're just missing so much. And in fact, you might be doing yourself active harm.
Absolutely. Speaking of active harm, I've unfortunately seen organizations where a leader will come out and say 90% of our teams have to be elite performers by the end of the year. Oh, that maybe on the surface that sounds good, but the truth is that ignores all of the context of every team, all of the current constraints of every team. I'd much rather have a leader come out and say, by the end of this year, I want everyone to improve by 50%. That is a much more achievable goal and frankly much more in line with the philosophy of continuous improvement that Dora is really trying to research and bring out to the industry.
That's a good point. So let's take that into the next section, which is so far we've been talking about kind of the lessons, kind of abstract, these kind of learnings. I think I wrote in the notes. I was like, like you can read all the books you want on riding a bicycle, but until you actually try to ride, you realize, oh, that's kind of all for naught. And YouTube, I know, is that I've watched so many videos on pro wrestling that I feel like I could get in the ring and do pretty well. Which of course I'm wise enough to know, oh, that's so not true. Yes, I know all the words, but that doesn't mean I know how to do it. So let's bring that back to Dora. You and I, and obviously much more you, are in the position to work with a lot of teams who have been trying to take this body of research and put it into practice. You kind of alluded to it a little bit, and I wonder if you could maybe share a specific story of a team that has taken this information, applied it to their particular case, and had some good success.
Yeah, great. I can give you a quick success story and potentially a cautionary tale if you'd like as well. So we'll start with the success story. I was working with one team that was in a regulated industry, and we were doing an assessment, kind of talking through how does their team work, what are their software delivery performance metrics look like, and of course, they wanted to get better. Actually, I remember the initial meeting I had with the leader of this particular team. He said, Nathan, this time I just want to set us up so that we do it right. We're going to do it right this time. And unfortunately, I had to share with him the bad news that I can guarantee you will not do it right this time, but we'll do it better. Because doing it right is, it's elusive. We always want to be getting better. But in any case, we went through an assessment, talked with a bunch of teams, and what we found was that this particular organization, their change approval process was very heavyweight. In fact, they had a policy written that said, in order for a change to get into production, this one vice president has to sign off on the changes. Of course, didn't necessarily know what was happening with those systems. Oh, and by the way, that vice president also liked to take a vacation from time to time. So what happens when he's out on vacation? No changes go to production. That's just how it worked. Now, imagine trying to change this within this organization. As an individual, I can't change that. As a team, I can't change that. It's going to take some organizational policies and processes that all need to be documented, updated, changed, automated, eliminated, etc. So the team took on that journey to actually make those investments. Now, it wasn't overnight. It took months for them to change the policies and build up the trust within their organization. But by the end, they were deploying something like 400 times more frequently than they were previously. And they got there and were able to use this evidence-based research to help them highlight this is our friction, this is our constraint. We need to go and alleviate that. So that's a really good success story.
But you said that was just one of the stories. I want to hear the other one because it's so
one.
easy to come here and be like, oh,
Yes.
everything's great, whatever. Talk to me
Yeah.
a little bit about maybe a time where people thought, I'm going to adopt Dora and everything's going to be better. And
Yes.
they learned lessons, but maybe not the ones they were intending.
Yep, I'll tell you a cautionary tale. So there was another organization that the Dora team worked with and did an assessment with and went back and reported to leadership. Here's what we found, and here are the things that we think you need to focus on. And as I've mentioned, the Dora research itself is largely survey based. We ask people a bunch of questions. That happens internally when we go into organizations as well. We ask a bunch of questions. The leaders at this particular organization said, well, you just asked everyone's opinion, man. We need data. So we're going to build and integrate our systems together so that we can have a dashboard, so that we can have precision and accuracy in our reporting. And that team went and spent 2 years building up those dashboards and integrating all of those processes together. And at the end of the 2 years, what they got was a glorious dashboard that gave them precise insights into just how well or poorly their team was performing. And it was essentially the same as what we told them 2 years ago. And in those 2 years, they made no progress towards improving. And so I think it's very easy to fall into the trap of let's just build a dashboard. Perhaps you're better off purchasing a dashboard, or at least just focusing on how are we going to improve these numbers, much less what are the raw numbers that we're looking at.
Oh, that one is fascinating. That one hits close to home, not only because I sell a dashboard thing, but it also hits to home how success isn't about measuring it all perfectly. I think,
Yes.
and I even see this with the people that I talk to is, they're like, oh, we want to get it all perfect. And there is value in having it perfect. I'm not saying that's a waste of time, but remember the point of Dora is improvement. And I think you nailed it on the head, which is a continuous improvement. It isn't about just saying something, doing something. It's about always looking back, say, okay, how can we get a little bit better? How can we get a little bit better? And focusing on that delta. And I think going back to our previous conversation, we were talking about how, the low, medium, high can be actually harmful because people think, well, we're high, now we're done. We're done. But when are you ever done improving? You should always be improving more. It's more about the delta. It's more about the delta, the how you're getting better. And Dora metrics, I think it's similar, where if you come in and you say, I just need to measure it, and then we'll figure it out. You go 2 years, no improvement. Yeah. It would be so much better to just talk to 3 people and they're like, yeah, we probably could improve this way and this resonates with us. Great. How can we start working on that today? You would have got so much more better results.
Yeah, I think this is also a really good place where, you see other research in this space. If you look at the developer experience framework that looks at things like flow and cognitive load and feedback loops, you look at the space framework that's also from Dr. Nicole Forsgren that looks at the different types of metrics that you need to look at. I think bringing all of this sort of as a holistic approach into your improvement efforts is really, really powerful. And on those dashboards, look, if you want to measure your deployment frequency and you can count your annual deployments on one hand, you probably don't need a dashboard for that.
Yes, as much as it pains me to agree with you, yes, I would agree. And I think again, your meta point is that the numbers are really valuable in a couple cases. One where you understand it, but maybe somebody else doesn't. And being able to point to a number and say, look, we are this, but research says that, and it can help you make an argument. That one is particularly useful. I think where I've seen it like you is where it doesn't work is people get so focused on how to measure, but they never think how they're going to improve, what new processes are going to put in place, what adjustments are they going to make, because they think they're just going to pay money for a tool and measure and we'll be done. And that's not how that works.
Absolutely. And in fact, in page 20 of last year's report, just to go reference that, there was a case study from Liberty Mutual where one of the things, Liberty Mutual uses Dora a lot within their own practice. And one of the key insights that they had is that these metrics are for the teams. They're not for the leaders. It's for the teams to understand and sort of coach themselves and use those metrics as a retrospective mechanism so that they can then design the right next improvement or next experiment to run across the team.
Right. Yes, I agree completely. That team, not necessarily the individual. I'm not saying that an individual couldn't gain value from knowing how long it takes them and they're getting stuck in review and they can improve. But yeah, looking at that as a team, because I think the other point you made, and it was a real subtle one, but I wanted to highlight it, is you didn't just say the team, you said the cross-functional team. It's not just the 5 developers. It's about the QA person. It's about the marketing person that might be involved. It's about the whole group, how you're delivering customer value. It's not just one function.
Yeah, and in fact, in the 2023 report, again, we're under a FRIENDA, so no talking about this. But we look at, of course, software delivery performance, but like previous years, we're also looking at operational performance. So what happens once that service is running? But we're also looking at the focus on the users. Are we delivering value to users? And we see this pattern of I don't know, you've probably run into this where executives or teams are like, we're going to create a feature factory. And what that feature factory does is pump out features. But if no customers care about those features, maybe we're just burning our people out without actually providing real value. So again, watch for the 2023 report. It's coming out towards the end of September.
Yes, and you should come to the meetup so we can talk about it.
Absolutely,
join
the
the
Dora
community
Community
join the mailing
Summit.
list.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. Okay, so we have gone through a lot of the theory. We've talked about the pitfalls. We've talked about how it's more than metrics, about other things. We talked about real-world examples of customers' teams using this information to improve, maybe using it in a way that wasn't as effective. And let's say we have someone out there that's new to Dora. Maybe they've read the book. Maybe they are hearing these stories. But, as they talk about the bicycle thing, you can't learn how to ride a bike by reading a book. You have to just do it. And so they're like, okay, fine, you sold me. What do I need to do now? What are my first steps? Is it to, I think the answer is going to be no, but, spend 2 years building a thing to measure it all perfectly? So we already know that's not the answer. Let's talk about maybe what is the answer. What are like the first 3 things that you're talking to an engineering leader out there? They want to adopt Dora. What are the first 2 things they do?
Yep, the first 3 things that I do, or I would recommend. First, pick one application or service. Don't try to implement this across your entire organization. I don't believe that you can change an entire organization until you show me that you can change how things work for one application team or one service team. And of course, that's a cross-functional team. So start there. Second, you've got to figure out where you are. Where are you today so that you can start investigating where should we make improvements. And a quick way to figure that out is to go to dora.dev and take the quick check. We're going to ask you 5 questions followed up by a round of other questions about 3 different capabilities. This will help you immediately start to assess how are we doing. But the way that you do that, Don, don't sit down at your computer by yourself and answer those questions. Instead, bring together that cross-functional team, throw it up on a board or in a virtual meeting, and have a discussion around those questions. I found that those discussions open up so much context and shared understanding that the team really gets invested in making those improvements. Once you're there, now it's time to get to work. How do you take what you just discovered and put it into practice? And that's the key word. It's about practice. You don't learn to ride a bike by watching YouTube videos. You learn to ride a bike by getting on a bike. And you're going to fall and you're going to hurt yourself and it's going to be painful. And then it's going to be glorious. And that's exactly what we're talking about here. And then as you're ready to start scaling that out, I'm going to give you a 4th step. Now it's maybe time to think about how do we instrument this data and start to get even deeper. Because those 4 signals can tell you there's a problem or there's not, but where? Where is the problem? This is where tools like Sleuth can really start help you digging in and figuring out what else is going on here.
Yeah, obviously I agree with your last advice. That one's an amazing one. But the thing that really stood out that I wanted to highlight, and I got so excited about my promo that I forgot my point, which was, about how unique the solution is to the people. I think you mentioned discussion, and it sounds like a cop-out. Like, no, it should be like, click here, click here, click here, and I'm done. And you're like, no, sit down and discuss. But your example of your example of improvement is a great case study for that, because it was one VP approving that for that organization. How many other organizations have one VP approving it? Probably not many. So the solution in that case is very different than your case. Maybe your case, you're a mobile app and you have, you're never going to get to more deployments, but that doesn't mean there's not bottlenecks. That doesn't mean you can't improve your response, things like that, than another team. So it's about having that organic discussion, honest discussion, cross-functional discussion to improve. And I guess the thing I just wanted to highlight as well is just how the commitment to change is the key thing here. If you are wanting to just pay money, even pay money to an amazing company like mine, and think you'll get anything out of it, you won't. It's about a tool. You just buy an awesome screwdriver, but you never, work on a bike or something. It's not going to do you any good. It's about using it. It's about making that commitment, and it's about doing that all together as a team.
Absolutely, absolutely. And one of the things that we try to provide for you through that quick check. If you ask a team, are you doing continuous integration? You're going to get answers ranging probably from yes to no. But what does it even mean? Like when we say continuous integration, you have a very different understanding of it than I do, or at least you've internalized that in a very different way. So we don't ask questions like that. Instead, we say code commits result in an automated build of the system. You strongly disagree or strongly agree with that? Now we can have a conversation around that, because again, we're going to have different perspectives, but bringing those perspectives to the foreground and having those discussions, we're really going to start to understand our system better. And that's what we need to improve, is the entire system. And the other quick point I'll make on this, we talked about coming together and having a conversation and being an honest, maybe even a dispassionate conversation about this. Think about the psychological safety that has to be in place, the culture that has to be in place in order for that to be there. And of course, culture is one of the things that we research year in and year out. And we continue to see strong connections between those organizations or teams that have that psychological safety, or that generative culture as defined by Ron Westrom, that those teams tend to perform best.
Right. Oh, that's such good information. And it's one of those that, to YouTube especially, but generally people just want to find that one little magic button, the easy button that they can press and have it. And I think you're just really highlighting the complexity of the situation, the desire for change, and the collaborative aspect you have to go at it to really get good results. Which and again, this isn't just opinion. This is backed up by research.
Yeah, it's backed up by data. It's backed up by research, and look, I'd love to sell you a tool. I'd love to tell you, move everything to this one provider, probably Google Cloud, with Sleuth combined, and boom, everything is magic, and now everything is just firing on all cylinders. We all know that that's not the case.
Yeah.
This is complex work. We're working in complex systems where the goalposts, if you will, are always changing. Like I said earlier, the users of our systems always have different expectations for them, and those expectations will change over time. We have to be able to respond and react in a similar fashion. And frankly, it's not just about users. There will be a 0-day vulnerability in the next 7 days. I can virtually guarantee it. How quickly can your team respond and react to that? It's just as important.
Yeah. Ooh. I could keep talking about this stuff forever. And thankfully, we have a forum where you can join that conversation and talk about it forever. Let's go to that. So the next thing is we want to talk about is questions. If it's been pretty quiet, I know Carl, Matt, Nathan, Nathan, that's you. Cindy have all joined in a little bit. Thank you for that. If there's any questions you have for Nathan, this is a great chance. And while you're thinking of your question, I wanted to share and talk a little bit more, just one more time, about the dora.dev. That's the website, dora.dev community. Once you go here, you can get access to all their publications, research, the capabilities, I think, is the underrated feature of this website. We talked about how do you go beyond just the 4 measurements, like what practices you put in place. That's exactly what this is. This is a whole catalog of things you can do in process-wise, things you do in culture-wise, things you can do, technical capabilities on improving things. So there's a lot of content out there. There's also a mailing list that's very active. I recommend you join that.
Yeah, on those capabilities, Don, each one of those capabilities articles talks about what that particular capability is, so that we can come to a common understanding of terms like continuous integration. What do we mean when we say that? But in addition to that description of exactly what we're talking about, we also outline some methods that you can use to actually improve that capability. We usually outline pitfalls and cautionary tales that you might fall into, objections that people might have. But then also, here come more measures. How do you measure a team's capability, their strength in that capability, whether it's continuous integration or a generative culture? We have ways that we can measure that, and you can find all of those in those capability articles.
Yes, good, an excellent resource for people out there who are wanting to go beyond just 4 numbers and what do I do now. Look at those in fact, I'd almost say start with the capabilities. I think there's just a lot of really good things. Of course, you need to measure to know if it's effective. So, it's, two parts of the same thing. We have a question, but let me get through my promos for this. One thing we talked about, damn it, I should have kept sharing, is the DevOps Enterprise Summit. So if you are going to it, there is a Google booth where Nathan, you will be. There's a Sleuth booth where I will be. And the day before the conference, there is a Dora community meetup.
That's right. We're having a Dora Community Summit. It's the first ever Dora Community Summit happening in person that Monday morning. That's October 2nd from about 9 to noon. We'll have Dr. Nicole Forsgren, who really started a lot of this research. She'll be there giving a keynote. But mostly that time will be spent in open discussion. What topics are most important to the people that show up right now? That's what we're going to talk about. And so I encourage you all to first come to the DevOps Enterprise Summit. It is an incredible summit. You'll get to meet me and Don in person. So like, what else do we need to say? But it's a great conference. Make sure you show up for the pre-conference events. And we definitely hope to meet you in Vegas.
Well said. I couldn't have done that promo any better. All right, we have a question from Matt, and this is a really good one. This is also we hear all kinds of time. Like, if I'm an engineering manager, I'm gonna embellish this question a little bit. I'm an engineering manager. I bought into the concept of Dora. I think this is really important, but it's going to take resources. This isn't a free thing that I can just adopt and I move on. I need to put people on this. How do I sell the idea of adopting Dora metrics up the chain?
Oh, I love this question and get it all the time. So I'm going to give you a couple of different resources here that you can go with. If you go over to dora.dev and go to the publications side, towards the bottom of that page, you'll find there's a research study that we put out, the ROI of a DevOps transformation. This helps you sell it with dollars and cents. How do we measure improving our software delivery performance? What is that going to, how is that going to show up on the balance sheet? And so we actually provide some formulas there that you can plug in your own data and figure out what that looks like. So that's one thing. And then the other thing, as an engineering manager, please and thank you, stay committed to this process. It is a process and you're building up a practice. And probably the best way to sell it up the chain is to start by selling it down the chain. How do we get our practitioners on board with this and show some early successes? If we can take some early successes plus an indication of how this is going to help us from an ROI perspective, if we can take both of those things up the chain, that will really help us. And we do need that help. This works really well ground up, if you will, practitioner led. But over time, it's going to fail if you don't have that executive buy-in and commitment as well. So you really do need both.
Yeah, that's a great point. The buy-in is important, but showing wins is really important. It's always more compelling if you're like, you want this, we can do it more, versus, hey, give me a lot of resources for something that I think is going to be awesome. You know, it's a little bit harder to sell, especially in this climate today.
Absolutely. And when we're talking about culture, right, we have to celebrate the wins, but also the failures, because those failures, we can learn from both of them. And really what we're celebrating is this new knowledge that we've gained, these experiences that we've had. Let's go celebrate those. And your executive sponsor, your leaders within your organization, they need to be on board with that as well.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. And that's also something that's easier, I could talk about this earlier, easier said than done, celebrating failures. In a work environment, like everyone's like, we expect failure, no problem. You have it, and they're like, yep, we're canceling that project. These 4 more that are sitting there that we know we need to do, we're doing them instead.
Yeah,
it's hard to practice.
We could spend another hour on that with success stories and cautionary tales.
So much stuff. Yeah, so you need to come to the thing. And actually, Cindy makes a good point. If you're interested in attending the Enterprise Summit in Las Vegas, Sleuth does have a few extra tickets that we have to give away. So if you're interested in that, you can contact our group. I don't know how much they're worth, but I'm going to say lots and lots of money. So that'd be a good way to get in. Come to the summit, come to the Dora Summit, and have some fun chats. Listen to Nicole. I didn't actually know Nicole was headlining. That's exciting. I've always wanted to see her speak. So
all right.
Perfect. Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Nathen, for coming on. I am very appreciative. I've had so much fun. I want to talk more, but that's okay. We have the thing coming up. And for all of you out there who have heard all this information, I just want to echo it again. There is usable, tangible stuff here, and I highly encourage you to check it out and look at how you can apply it to your team, because a team that is working better is a happier team that sticks together better. Everything's great. I'll just say that. Everything's great. Adopt Dora. Everything's great. How's that for a subtle marketing message ending there?
Everything's great. I'll go back to one I said earlier. We're going to help you get better at getting better. Let's lean into that continuous improvement mindset and practice.
Continuous improvement. That's your takeaway from this. Adopt continuous improvement. Use Dora. Use the information. But it's all about you continuing. All right. Thank you very much, Nathen. I appreciate it.
Elite software teams demand.
Really fun chatting with you, and I can't wait to see you in Vegas.
I can't wait as well. All right. Take it easy. Now, before I ended, again, thanks to Nathen, that was awesome. Before I ended, I did promise you that trailer that I accidentally pressed the button for, which is showing off the webinar that we're doing next week. Again, next week, what we're doing is we're going to be talking about how to take this information from Dora and use a new feature that Sleuth is providing called Sleuth Automations. What this does is this allows you one-click install tools to help you implement some of the process improvements, improve your code review time, your change lead time, your deployment frequency, things like that, even your incident response. So if you are interested in that, if you are interested in not just measuring DORA metrics, but taking steps to improve it, and you think a tool like this could be useful, you need to come by next week to get all the fun details. But before I leave you, I want to show you the trailer that we made. We're really excited. We've never done a trailer like this before for Sleuth Automations. And I'll see you in the same bat time, same bat channel. I've always wanted to say that. Thanks, everyone.
Elite software teams demand great efficiency and developer experience. We're talking high output, reliability, and morale. What's their secret? They've hand-built a platform to power a continuous improvement loop. And now you can have that too. Sleuth is your platform to empower this continuous loop. Quickly pinpoint areas needing improvement. Implement those improvements instantly with automations and automatically measure their impact. Continuously improve as elite teams do with Sleuth Automations.